Hey everyone, this is John from EastCoastArmory.com, and I'm here today with a model showcase video for this 1/16 scale radio-controlled German Jagdtiger heavy tank destroyer. The model that you see here is built for my own personal collection and is not for sale and or purchase. However, as I often mention in these build videos, I often take on commission build projects from vehicles ranging from 1/35 scale all the way up to 1/6 scale. As for availability and pricing information, that information would be best by contacting me through the email address listed below, which is info@EastCoastArmory.com. Now, this model here is built using a ready-to-run Jagdtiger kit that is found on the market. However, the model has underwent some modifications as well as several repairs, of which we'll be going over all in more detail in this video. Before we go any further with the video, let's go ahead and take a quick walk around the model. And this vehicle here is the Panzerjagdtiger auf Bay, otherwise known as the Jagdtiger. The Jagdtiger was a heavy tank destroyer which was developed by Germany at the tail end of World War II. The vehicle itself is heavily based off of the King Tiger with its suspension as well as the overall hull configuration as well as the drivetrain and transmission. However, even though the two cosmetically looked similar, the Jagdtiger actually features a longer hull compared to the King Tiger counterpart. These vehicles were extremely heavily armored, and the vehicles came in at around 71 tons. In combination for the extreme heavy armor, the vehicles also featured a very powerful main gun. The main gun was the 12.8 centimeter Pak 44 L-55. This gun here was a very powerful anti-tank weapon and was the exact same armament which was going to be placed in the turret of the Moss Super Heavy Tank as well as the proposed E100s. Unlike the Moss or the E100, which would have utilized a revolving turret, the Jagdtiger has a static casemate type design. This type of a design cue was one that the Germans implemented on several occasions. The Germans would develop a very highly effective and very powerful anti-tank gun. However, while they're developing the vehicle to use this gun inside of the turret, they'll take this weapon, put it inside of a casemate design for use as a tank destroyer role. This exact same type of procedure was done with the Jagdpanther. The Jagdpanther had the very powerful 88mm gun, to which then the King Tiger would have utilized the same gun, but in a revolving turret. The Jagdtiger's other armament consisted of a single MG34T in the bow machine gun role. This was again lifted directly off of the King Tiger. In addition to the bow machine gun, there was also an anti-aircraft MG42 machine gun, which was located on the aft portion of the engine deck. Now, this was a feature that was not found on all of the Jagdtigers, but several of them did feature this fitting. As for the power plant, since this is the same exact type of transmission and drivetrain as the King Tiger, a Maybach HL230 engine with the Cyclone air cleaners would have been utilized to propel this vehicle. Approximately 80 to 90 of the Jagdtigers were produced from 1944 to 1945. Just like with many of the other German tanks of the period, the Jagdtigers did suffer heavily from mechanical breakdowns and failures. This is more than likely due to the shortages for the raw materials required to make such integral components, namely that for the engine and transmission components. Currently, there are 3 known examples of Jagdtigers that survived the war and are on public display. The first vehicle is located in the United States. This vehicle was for the longest time housed externally at the Aberdeen Proving Ground Museum, but has since been moved to Fort Benning, Georgia, awaiting restoration, as well as a indoor museum housing. There is another example housed in the Kubinka Tank Museum in Eastern Europe, and there's a third example found in the United Kingdom in the Bovington Tank Museum. The examples in the United States and the version in Kubinka represent that with the Henschel pattern of suspension, while the Bovington example is the only known survivor of a Jagdtiger that featured the Porsche pattern of suspension. Before we continue with the video, let's go ahead and take a step back to when the model was first started in order to get a good idea on what the base starter kit supplied me with, as well as the hurdles and modifications that need to have been made in order to get the tank up to the condition you see here in this video. And here's the model at the project start. For the base starter kit, I'll be utilizing this ready-to-run 1/16 scale radio-controlled Jagdtiger from Torro. The model itself was procured from TagenTanks.com. TagenTanks.com is the sister website for the imex model company. imex, of course, is the Florida-based distributor and retailer of many of the model kits on the market, but specifically for this video, they are a large distributor for the Tagen kits as well as the Torro kits that are sold in the United States. The model itself was procured about a year ago and has been sitting in storage in its original shipping carton ever since, and it's kind of been used as a scratching post by one of my cats. The model was periodically test driven after it came in just to make sure that everything was working and to see where I stand on the project, and after that it was sealed back up and often went back into storage. It is at this point now where I can take the model out of the carton in order to start the project. And here's the model now removed from its shipping carton. As you can see, the model has a retail type box art, and for anyone who has seen the other YouTube videos about the Tagen tank unboxing, or even who have purchased these tanks themselves, this box here is very standard and looks exactly the same. As for the Tagen graphic design, it's very plain. We just have a simple cardboard type box with that of the picture of the tank, the name of the vehicle, and as well as the features and the other verbiage which one typically finds on a retail type box art. In the corner here we see the name Torro, imex the importer, and there are some other options available, namely that of, this is again more for retail, rather you can have it with the camo, the infrared, or the airsoft. Again, there are several versions of this tank that have been released by Torro. This one is the airsoft firing variant, as opposed to the other variants which have the infrared for tank versus tank fighting, and there are also several different camouflage patterns that are offered by the company itself. Now this is where things get a little hazy for me with the actual origin of this kit, as there are three major manufacturers of these ready-to-run 1/16 scale tanks that are on the market. The three companies, of course, are Henlong, Tagen, and Matto. Now, from what I've seen, the Torro branded models are made by the same manufacturer that produces the Tagen kits. The reason why I say that is because generally, wherever you see the Tagen models for sale, you'll also tend to find the Torros. In addition to that, as you can clearly see, the box art and even the quality of the parts on the inside are identical to that which was produced by Tagen. Now, also from what I've seen, the Torro branded products tend to be more prolific in the European market, and the vehicles that are labeled as Torro are generally the same vehicles that are made by, or packaged by, the Tagen model company that I've seen here in the United States. Again, I'm a little hazy on this, and I might be mistaken with my assumptions. However, if I am, or if anyone has any better clarification, please feel free to clarify this in the comment section listed below. Now, the 1/16 scale radio-controlled Jagdtiger model dates back to around 2009. Around that time, Henlong produced a vehicle of the same type. This vehicle was all plastic and had the airsoft firing capability. In addition to that, the model was released shortly after the release of their 1/16 scale Porsche King Tiger. When these models came out, they were actually pretty affordable, which one would come to expect for Henlong. However, they were not in production for a terribly long period of time, and the vehicles themselves were somewhat harder to come by compared to the other releases. The reason for that was that the vehicle itself was very flawed in its design. What Henlong did was they went ahead and cut some corners to actually release this model. And what they did was they recycled the entire lower hull from that of their Porsche Tiger, which was just released. The reason why this is problematic is because the Jagdtiger did not utilize the King Tiger's hull. as strange as that sounds. This is because on the hull of the Jagdtiger, the hull is considerably longer compared to that of the standard Tiger II. The Henlong variant also had a very large and noticeable blister found in the front portion here of the lower hull in order to make clearance for that of the gearboxes that were being used at the period. Because of these errors, these vehicles fell out of favorability very quickly and were not again in production for a terrible long amount of time. They are still, however, found on eBay from time to time, and a person might come across one in the wild. Shortly after the Henlong variant, a couple years followed, and then RC and Torro started coming onto the scene with their version of the Jagdtiger. The RC version, or I should say the Torro version, does not have the problems that were found on the original Henlong release. Now, as for this particular model here, this model was, again, acquired from TakenTanks.com, but more specifically, this was acquired from their scratch and dent section. Just like I mentioned last year with my late production Tiger 1 video, on Taken Tank's website, they have a section for models that they cannot sell in their standard catalog. The reason for this is that these models may be damaged in one way, shape, or form, either from shipping or returns from other customers, and are warranty exchanges. Because these vehicles cannot be sold in their standard catalog, they are listed in an as-is state on their scratch and dent section. That is precisely where I acquired this model, as when I crack open the box, you will see why this model couldn't have been sold in the standard configuration. Now, as for the type of kits and prices that are found on this section of the website, of course, this being a first-come, first-served type situation, this all depends at the luck of the draw on what's available in the inventory that they're getting rid of at a discount price. So it is something that anyone out there should just check from time to time in case a vehicle might be posted that piques your interest. Cracking open the box reveals the model's interior. The model is still wrapped in its original packaging with that of its styrofoam sarcophagus, which one typically finds on these type of models. Over here we have the box of BBs, and here we have some batteries, which were just, I guess, left over from when I took the tank for the last test drive when I first acquired it. Taking out the styrofoam, you can now see the actual tank model on the inside. Now, here you can see why this vehicle is a scratch and dent and not one of the standard configurations. The model's entire upper hull was replaced with that from their unpainted kit version, as apparently the original painted version must have been damaged too severely. As for the packaging, again, it is packaged pretty well. It does hold the tank in nice and firm. Taking the tank out, you'll see the model in more clarity. As you can see, the lower hull was that of one of the pre-built camouflage versions that had its hull replaced, like I mentioned before. Now, even though the hull is replaced, it is also damaged in that if we see this section here of the hull, you'll see some cracks that are found on the top plate. The cracks are found on both sides of the armor plate of the front. Now, the broken sections in the front are not a surprise. In fact, they were mentioned in detail in the listing that was found on Tation's website. And I purchased the kit knowing full well about all of the damage that is found on this model here. As for the rest of the packaging, you'll see that the barrel is protected with that of this PVC tube being used as a shroud. And the barrel itself is all aluminum, which is a very nice touch. You will also see that the model has all of its fittings made in that of die-cast metal alloy, which is also very nice. In fact, many of these detail components that you see here are sold on Taken's website as a way for people to upgrade their Henlong models that have all these same components in plastic. Of course, I'm referring to the standard King Tiger, of course, and not the Jagdtiger configuration that I have here. In addition to the die-cast parts, you could also see the photo etch grill mesh covers that come standard with this model. Again, generally these need to be acquired as an aftermarket source, and it's a nice touch that are present on this build here. Digging further in the box takes us to the 2.4 gigahertz radio. Now this radio does have a broken antenna, but again, this is something that is not too difficult for me to repair. We have here, if I can get it out, that of the standard AC adapter for that of recharging the battery. The tank also has a standard 7.2 battery, which is inside of the tank from after I test drove it. And there's also a box here of accessories, pretty standard for that of the 1/16 scale tanks that are on the market. Opening up the box takes us with some nice metal spare track links. An accessory bag with that of mud flaps. And the anti-aircraft MG42, which gets mounted on the back portion of the engine hatch. Of course, the smoke fluid is supplied, as this vehicle does have the full options. Deeper in the box takes us to, of course, the literature, which is at your basic instruction manual and little targets that one always finds with these models. Now back to the tank. The tank itself does have a lot of metal components already found on it, in addition to the accessories that I mentioned before. For instance, the tracks are all metal, as well as the wheels and the rest of the suspension. This is very nicely done in that generally these pieces would all have to be acquired as an aftermarket source, but on this model here it's not necessary as it comes with the base kit. As for getting access inside of the vehicle, that is all facilitated with that of this engine hatch. The engine hatch simply just opens up and out of the way. With the hatch open, you can see the control panel on the inside, which is that of your main power switch, as well as your smoke system kill switch. There's also the volume control knob that is found in this section over here. Now to open it up, the entire control panel is that of a slide, and by moving this, it opens up the locks, which then allows me to lift the entire upper hull off of the model. Starting with the upper hull, one other switch and function that is found on this vehicle is that of the kill switch for that of the airsoft gun, which is found under the main hatch, as well as the hopper in order to load up the airsoft gun. On the inside, you can see the internals. Here go the two locks that lock into the hull, and the rest of the fighting compartment equipment. The gun is right here, and the gun has the elevation gearbox right behind the hut. The elevation is the same system found on the other Tegan tanks, as well as Henlong vehicles as well. Now, the airsoft gun can go up and down, however, it does not have the ability to transverse from left and right, which is a feature that is found on the real Jagdtiger and other vehicles of the casemate design. On this vehicle here, the transverse is just a dead system and a dead channel on your radio. Now, if you'll notice, the gun is transversing right now. However, this is not as per design, as this here is some of the damage that is found on this upper hull, in addition to the broken sections of the hull that I showcased earlier. Moving our way to the hull interior. The hull interior you see here is all stock, and the model does have an upgraded steel gearbox. This is a very nice addition that was pre-supplied with this model, and I believe this was something that was thrown in by Tegan to make the model sell quicker, as this is not generally something I've seen on the other scratch and dents that have been posted on there in the past. These gearboxes I've used before on a Henlong Sherman as well as on my late production Tiger 1, and these gearboxes are fantastic and arguably some of the best on the commercial market. While on the inside of the vehicle, you can see how the hull is comprised. The hull is actually a mosaic of plastic, sheet metal, and die-cast components to get the entire model assembled. The front section here is that of a die-cast molded section that is bolted to the plastic tub for that of the hull that make up the hull sides and the sponson, and the bottom plate of the vehicle is sheet metal that is pressed and fitted to the sides. Also, you can see on the bottom of the tank that they also have the underhull access panel detailing, and even the thicker front plate portion that is found on the King Tiger series. It's a very nice addition, and one that is missed most often on these ready-to-run vehicles. Now, another bit of repair work that I've seen just now is that this section here that holds the rear plate to the sponson, you can clearly see it being broken. Of course, this is going to have to be repaired during the build. Now, even though this model does have some superficial damage to it, the electronics and the functionality of the model is still 100% functional as per the original offering. It is at this point here where I can go ahead and start the teardown and the rebuild process, as well as the repairs that need to be done in order to get this model to the finish line.